Here we have a young business guy wearing sunglasses to try to convince you he still knows how to have fun. But more importantly, he's sitting on an immense pile of gold. You know, that thing that used to back our dollars before we departed from the gold standard? But now, right now, for the very first time in a long time, someone who might actually be relevant on the US political stage is actually talking about returning to hard assets backing our fiat currency. And among those hard assets is crypto. If you haven't given up the dream that we might one day be able to exit this crazy fiat nightmare, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. I'm going to be honest, I feel like people are sleeping on this. We've just passed a pretty important point in the timeline. A legit contender for the White House is straight up saying in this video right here, straight up saying that under his administration, they would begin backing the US dollar with finite assets. And he names gold, platinum, and Bitcoin. True. I wish he just said crypto. Of course, I wish he said Cardano. That's not going to happen. He's not even going to say crypto. He's not going to say Cardano. He's not going to say anything else. He's going to say Bitcoin. Why? Because he's trying to get in the White House. And outside of those of us in crypto, people don't even really know what crypto is. They certainly don't know what Cardano is. Mainstream American voters, they don't know those things are. They do know what Bitcoin is. Okay, maybe they know what crypto is, but Bitcoin is more acceptable at this point in time. That'll all change. For now, let's just get a crypto guy in the White House. And RFK Jr. has a chance. I think he's a relevant player, right? You could say there's no way the institutions operating the Democratic Party would never allow this. They are whole hog in on Biden. And you're probably right. But first, we get someone who's relevant on the national stage, someone who could be a contender to just say it. Just say, I'm going to back the dollar with pick any crypto asset. That just happened. He's certainly relevant on that stage. True. He's the only politician alive who can claim to have stolen the Grim Reaper's voice. Ranking member, those are lies. Okay, that was the worst RFK Jr. impression ever, but you get what I'm saying. Dude sounds like the Grim Reaper, which is a problem. It's a problem to attract American voters if you sound like the Grim Reaper. But he does represent a return to something that's more recognizable to the American voter. Those American voters who are left-leaning, they might look at the current leftist, political machinery and not recognize what they're seeing. But RFK Jr. certainly represents a return to something that's probably much more recognizable. So he's going to have an impact on this election. We don't know what's going to happen in the primaries. I'm not saying that there's a chance that we end up with an RFK as the Democratic nominee. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but he's going to have an impact on this election. And he's straight up saying, let's back the dollar with crypto. Nayib Bukele already started that process in El Salvador. I have no idea how far along he's got. I have no idea how much Bitcoin they've racked up, how much, political inconvenience this has been for him as we've gone through sort of a crypto winter. But we knew when that happened that El Salvador wouldn't be the last country to do this. We knew that some forward-looking politician in some other country would do the same thing, and another country would do it, and the dominoes would start falling. I didn't guess that one of the first major dominoes to follow El Salvador could possibly be the US. And I still don't think that will be the case, but this is step one. Someone who's actually relevant on the national political stage, just saying it. And that's the point we just crossed. You know what I hate? TVL. Man, do I hate TVL as a metric in crypto. But you know what overrides my hatred of TVL? It's when Cardano is winning. And look at this little time lapse that's been created here. This is Cardano climbing the TVL rankings over the course of 2023. We started out clear on here, and you can see we're climbing. I'm going to fast forward a little bit for you so you can see that it is an upward trajectory. Cardano is doing A-okay in the one thing that we definitely started late on, and that's collecting total value locked. You want to know one of the best things about Cardano? The things that we have mad drama over, the stuff that people get really crazy over, is actually pretty manageable. I mean, the thing in Cardano is that we have crazy high standards. We hold ourselves to these insane awesome standards when it comes to things like decentralization and self-governance and actually moving toward that goal of creating a level economic playing field for the entire world. We hold ourselves to crazy high standards, and we get after each other when we feel like we're not moving in the right direction as far as those very high standards go. And that's fantastic. But it also leads to these situations where we get super dramatic over stuff that comparatively is pretty manageable compared to some of the very fundamental shortcomings that some of our competitors are experiencing. Ethereum slashing. Some of our competitors, they have these problems that they're never going to fix. I mean, they don't even think they're problems, but in my opinion, they're definitely shortcomings and they're incurable. They can't fix them. It's very difficult for them to pull some of those fundamental cornerstones of their ecosystems out and replace them with something else. They've sort of gone far enough down certain roads that they can't fix it. Of course, I think of the way proof of stake works for some of our competitors and also the way governance works for some of our competitors. Famously, I I think we can I think we can just say it at this point. Some of our competitors are less decentralized than the Federal Reserve. When you count the number of parties who are actually making the decisions, there are more people in those FOMC meetings deciding on the course of the federal funds rate than there are people in these ecosystems deciding on the future of those ecosystems. That's a sad fact for crypto, but it's great for Cardano that we're actually moving toward real decentralized governance. And here's where we run into a problem. Just like the founding of Bitcoin was kind of centralized. We just have this one person or group of persons, Satoshi Nakamoto, who kicked off Bitcoin and then it became decentralized. Same thing happens in pretty much every ecosystem. A team or a lab entity or a group of people, they kick it off. In our case, it was the three founding entities, the Cardano Foundation, IOG, and Emergo, who started Cardano. And likewise, the founding of the governance system we currently have, which is Catalyst, which just governs the treasury and handing out treasury money to projects. We're going to have more with Voltaire. We're going to have full self-governance. But right now, this is the governance we have. That was also centralized. It was started by IO. And that sets the stage for this story. So this post says the single most important vote in Catalyst history, Catalyst fund operations. And then it gives you a link to a Catalyst proposal, I presume. It says, too long didn't read. IO is currently running Catalyst and taking money from the treasury. So, okay, this kind of makes sense to me. I mean, just like somebody had to start the Cardano ecosystem, somebody had to start the Bitcoin ecosystem, somebody had to start Catalyst. We didn't really have a a mechanism in place for the ecosystem to start Catalyst on a decentralized basis. I mean, Catalyst was the catalyst for self-governance. I mean, it was the thing, the sort of off, kind of like hybrid off-chain, on-chain, kind of beginning, the thing that would kick off what would eventually lead to Voltaire self-governance. And it had to be started by somebody. In this case, it was started by IO. And now IO is actually putting that before a vote of the Cardano community in Catalyst. So it looks like they're asking for a certain amount of funds to continue running Catalyst for, the next 3 rounds. The Catalyst team decided to specify that they want funding for the next 3 funding rounds, and there's a certain dollar amount attached to that. These are important things that we should all pay attention to. Everybody should be paying attention to this vote. This is probably one of the most important votes we've ever had in Catalyst, but it would take a lot for someone to convince me at this point that somebody else should be running Catalyst besides IOG. I mean, we have entities in the Cardano ecosystem who could probably take on this task. And they, after a little practice and feeling things out and figuring things out, they could probably make it work. But if we're talking about the next 3 funds, it seems like IOG is maybe the only entity that makes sense. I mean, maybe somebody could create a narrative, make a good argument that somebody else should be running Catalyst, but it would take a lot to convince me at this point. It would be like hard for me to be convinced by another party that they could run Catalyst better than IOG, especially given that we're talking about transitioning into full Voltaire self-governance pretty soon. It kind of makes sense just to leave Catalyst in the hands of IOG for now, get full Voltaire self-governance in place, and then, then we can move on with our mission of decentralizing everything and allowing IOG to kind of recede from some of these roles that they've, frankly been forced to take on. I'm sure they would have loved it if some other entity would have been present that could have done a lot of these things like running Catalyst. But for now, man, I mean, I guess somebody could convince me that they could run Catalyst better than IOG, but I just can't imagine who it is. This is probably a much more succinct expression of what I think a lot of people are probably thinking. This poster says, I'm voting for the IOG proposals and any future ones they put up. We all say we can go it alone, and we can, but the price will tank to 12 cents if IOG pulls out, and you all know it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. People are worried about how big IOG's role is in the Cardano community. What I'm worried about is that they haven't gotten paid, by us at least, in a long time. The Cardano community, if you think back to the last time we paid IOG for everything they're doing for the community, it was the ICO. I mean, you could argue, they've made money other ways, those kinds of things, but we've definitely gotten a lot of free work out of IOG, and they've basically built all of the infrastructure. Okay, not all of it, but a lot of the major infrastructure in this ecosystem, basically without getting paid for a long time, at least. I mean, obviously they were allotted, a certain portion of the ADA right at the beginning, and they figured out how to make other money through staking and things like that. What I'm worried about is that IOG says, okay, we've done enough. Now it's time for us to move on. If we lost IOG, that's a much bigger problem than the size of IOG's current role. But here's something else that people are worried about. This post says, Cardano community, call to action for Cardano parameter changes. Please read and join conversation. So you remember, we had that poll. We had the big SPO poll, and it was followed pretty closely. I covered it quite heavily on this channel because I thought it was very important. And the end of the poll looks something like this. The option that won every metric, no matter how you look at it, was K equals 1,000 and pool min fee of 170. And in my opinion, those are the better parameters. They're the ones that people overwhelmingly seem to choose, except for, a lot of the multi-pools, the people who are collecting a lot of min fees, and the people who maybe didn't want so much decentralization. People had other very legitimate arguments, other reasons why they believed that these parameters, were not optimal. And some people I believe had very good intentioned reasons for choosing other parameters. But overwhelmingly, the people who were not multi-pools and were in favor of decentralization seem to choose these parameters right here. But we also know that that was just a poll. That was just the Cardano Foundation figuring out how all of the stake pool operators felt about these parameters. And of course, as delegators, we all had the opportunity to move our delegation around, all those kind of things to show our approval or disapproval of certain positions by the stake pool operators. But it was just sort of informative for the Cardano Foundation and the other founding entities, and we knew they weren't going to be bound by the decision. And in the interim, we've also seen the formation of this thing that people have been calling a parameters committee. And people have questions about this parameters committee, like who is on the parameters committee? How are they picked? This poster says those are the obvious questions and more. Each meeting, members are added. However, we have never been given an explanation of how they are picked and why. Notes for the meeting are posted here. What are the functions of the members in their different groups? Do all members have a say on parameter outcome? Or let's call it a voting member? Where are the disclosures of the members? Where are the disclosures of the members? Does the member run a pool? Are they a single pool operator or a multi-pool operator? Did they vote in the on-chain poll? What is the makeup as far as those factors in the committee? Do MPOs outnumber single pools as multi-pool operators? Did a majority vote for K equals 500 in the poll? Why do disclosures matter? Because the appearance of conflicts of interest, or does the group have bias towards an outcome? We don't want the appearance of someone putting their fingers on the scale. With the poll results showing the winning option was K equals 1,000 and 178 in pool min fee, it seems like the decision by parameter committee should be straightforward, right? Well, they had their own vote and voted to keep K at 500 and lower pool min to 170. This was supposed to be a test for Voltaire. Community spoke, and the community decided to do something other than what the community voted for without much justification given. So that was the committee decided, the parameters committee decided to do something other than what community voted for without much justification given. Please join the conversation here and tag your favorite Cardano people. So the part I don't know, I'm guessing that the parameters committee, their input is also just informative for the founding members. I'm guessing that's not binding. I haven't dug into this to see, exactly what information is out there about the parameters committee, but I'm guessing this is, just the founding entities wanting to do a poll like they did, an online poll, an on-chain poll rather, of all the SPOs, with the delegators moving their delegation to show their approval or disapproval. And they probably also wanted to do some workshopping of the same ideas with actual live humans and get sort of their input also that way. No surprise, the people who are willing to be on this committee are also the people who would want to keep K at 500. Obviously, a lot of the multi-pool operators are the ones that have the most economic stake in things like this. And they tended to be, the people who were likely to vote for K equals 500 for some reason in that poll, it seemed. They did choose to lower the pool min fee down to 170. That's nice, but we'll have to see. Is this just sort of informative for the founding entities? Is it non-binding on the founding entities? If so, and it really just does come down to the decision of the Cardano Foundation, Emergo, and IOG, it'll be interesting to see what direction they actually go. When I actually click into the thread, we get the answer to that question. It says, here are the notes from the previous meeting, parameter committee. They are a technical advisory group and only make recommendations. So these are just recommendations to the founding entities, just like the on-chain SPO poll was. Here we have, looks like the makeup of the committee. It looks like it's a lot more people who I'm guessing are IOG people. I see some familiar names there: Kevin Hammond, Matthew Capps, Michael Peyton Jones. We're definitely seeing some IOG people. So these are, there's some actual very technical people there. Like I suspect that Kevin Hammond might know 10,000 times more about Cardano parameters than I do. So that's kind of reassuring. And also when we come down here, it looks like the votes are a little more nuanced than that thread on Twitter at least led me to believe. It says votes in favor of decreasing the min pool cost parameter all. So it looks like everybody in the committee did vote to decrease the min pool cost parameter to 170 ADA. The committee recommended decreasing min pool cost to 170 ADA. Votes in favor of keeping K at 500 for the near future, all. But there's a reason for that. We can see up here. They say there's a relationship between the K parameter and the min pool cost. Changing both parameters drastically and at the same time could have unexpected and potentially negative effects on the economics of stake pool operation. As long as the number of pools doesn't change dramatically, we see no big effects on the operational performance of the network. So it looks like they're actually just doing the scientific thing, which is changing one variable at a time. They're like, hey, K and min pool cost are related. There's a relationship there. So let's just change min pool cost first, see what happens, keep K where it is for the near future, and then come back and look at K parameter more once we know what the 170 ADA min pool cost is going to do. And mind you, all of this is just a recommendation. I like it. They're saying, hey, let's reduce min pool cost just like the on-chain poll suggested, but let's change these variables one at a time. Let's do the smart scientific thing. Have you ever noticed there's always a backstory to these extreme crypto haters? You'll remember Ben McKenzie. He's the actor who was on the OC that was kind of like a teen drama a long time ago set in Orange County, California. And then more recently, he was on some kind of superhero show, I think. Anyways, he's the guy you'll probably remember. He was at a conference, some kind of a crypto conference. They kind of had this setup deal where I think they thought that Ben McKenzie was going to get on stage and, tell Charles how it is, Charles Hoskinson of Cardano. He was going to set him straight. And of course, the exact opposite happened. Charles seemed to completely school Ben McKenzie on why everything he was saying was totally wrong. Well, it turns out there's a backstory to why Ben McKenzie hates crypto so bad. So it turns out that according to this Guardian article, and it sounds like they were just sitting there interviewing Ben McKenzie. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like they were just interviewing him because they have some pretty nice quotes here. It says he essentially bet $250,000 that the crypto market would collapse, but got the timing wrong and lost most of it. Did that make him question his position? Oh, yeah. And it made me think about how to tell my wife. So this makes sense to me all now, because a lot of people get into trouble shorting the crypto market. Just shorts in general, people get in trouble, right? But shorting the crypto market, especially, people seem to lose a lot of money. People lose a lot of money longing the crypto market as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not implying anything besides that, but people have definitely lost a decent amount of money trying to short the crypto market. And it looks like Ben McKenzie, according to this, is one of them. This kind of explains why he would be so anti-crypto. If I had to explain to my wife why I lost $250,000 on a crypto bet, I too would be pretty mad at crypto. Unfortunately, the punishment for Mr. McKenzie for being a crypto hater has been long and hard. You see, he wasn't just content to get wrecked by some crypto guy named Charles at some crypto conference. He wasn't content just to be a guy who hates crypto on crypto Twitter. He decided to write a whole crypto book. I want to call it an anti-crypto book, but to be fair, I haven't read the book and I'm not going to read the book. I believe the book comes out today. If you're watching this video on the day the video premieres, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe this is the day the book comes out, which is a problem for Mr. McKenzie because he certainly probably did not predict that Judge Torres would come down pretty heavily on the side of crypto, saying crazy stuff like, hey, you could have an investment contract, which would be a security, which could have underlying assets that are cryptocurrencies, but those underlying assets, just by themselves, they're not securities. This is kind of a problem for the thesis of crypto haters. When you got a district court federal judge coming out and saying cryptocurrencies as assets are not securities, that's in direct conflict with their whole thesis, their whole problem. Their whole claim is that all of crypto, these are all just securities used by scammers to steal everybody's money. I'm not saying those aren't Ben McKenzie's words, but he's certainly a part of the group that seems to think things like that. This is problematic because in the wake of that decision coming out from Judge Torres in the SEC versus Ripple case, Ben McKenzie had to go on a book tour. He's got to get people to buy this book. And that's already a problem with the Ripple decision coming out. It's starting to look like he's on the wrong side of history, especially when he has to go on these shows like Squawk Box on CNBC. And you got an anchor like this. This anchor says, hey, you're telling me you did a deep dive into crypto and you're anti-crypto, but we've got all of these legacy Wall Street institutions like BlackRock and Fidelity. They're all scrambling to create crypto ETFs. They certainly seem to believe in crypto. He says, I only read 20 pages of the Bitcoin Standard, and even I can see how crypto could certainly help the unbanked and do good things for the world. Why is it you, Ben McKenzie, seem to be so anti-crypto? Is Bitcoin going to go to zero? How long will Bitcoin last? Will Bitcoin die at some point, or do you think Bitcoin will go forever? And of course, Ben McKenzie gets this super sour look on his face, like somebody at a funeral. There it is, right there. Looks like he's a dude at a close a close family member's funeral, and he kind of just mutters under his breath, "It's a story. It'll go on as long as people believe in it." I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like that. Finally, it looks like we are going to have an option protocol on Cardano. MuesliSwap team says, exciting news, introducing option flow, the new option protocol launching on Cardano. Here are about the endless possibilities with option flow. I think they're just letting you know there are endless possibilities with option flow. As always, full disclosure, as I've said many times in the past, I own some milk and some Hungry Cow NFTs, just so you know. But I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.